Admiral Lee Daeho stood in the command center of the TDF Incheon, staring at the message that had just arrived. The blue glow from the holographic display cast shadows on his weathered face. At 45 years old, he had seen more battles than most officers would in 3 lifetimes. The scar running from his left temple to his jaw was a reminder of the Proxima campaign, where he had lost half his fleet but saved 1 million colonists. The message was short and cold. It came from the Galactic Council, the group of alien races that claimed to rule this part of space. They wanted humanity to send one ship to the moon called Kithara for what they called negotiations. Lee knew better. In his 25 years of military service, he had learned that when powerful enemies called for talks, they usually meant something else entirely. "Sir, Captain Park So-min is requesting permission to come aboard," said Lieutenant Yoon at the communications station. Her voice was steady, but Lee could hear the worry underneath. "Send her up," Lee replied, still reading the message for the 3rd time. Every word felt like a trap waiting to spring. 10 minutes later, Captain Park So-min walked into the command center. She was 32 years old and commanded the stealth ship TDF Seoul. Her short black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes showed the sharp intelligence that made her the best reconnaissance officer in the fleet. She carried a data pad and looked like she had not slept in days. "Admiral, we need to talk privately," she said, glancing around at the other officers on duty. Lee nodded and led her to his ready room. The small office was simple, with just a desk, 2 chairs, and a large window showing the stars outside. On the desk was a picture of his wife and daughter back on Earth, the only personal items he allowed himself in space. "What did you find, So-min?" he asked, using her first name as he always did when they were alone. They had served together for 8 years, and she was one of the few people he completely trusted. Park placed her datapad on the desk and activated it. A 3-dimensional map appeared, showing the Kithara system. Red dots marked enemy ship positions around the small moon. "It is not good, sir," she said. "We detected massive fleet movements from 3 different council species. The Vorthak Empire has moved 2 full battle groups to the system. The Nexari Collective has brought their advanced ships with the new energy weapons. Even the Kalani Trade Federation has sent warships, and they never get involved in military actions." Lee studied the map carefully. The red dots formed a perfect trap around Kithara. Any ship that jumped into the system would be surrounded immediately. "How many ships total?" he asked. "Our best count is 400 ships, sir. Maybe more hiding behind the moon where our sensors cannot see them." Lee sat back in his chair and rubbed his jaw where the old scar ached. 400 ships was more than enough to destroy any fleet humanity could send. The entire Terran defense fleet had only 300 ships, spread across dozens of systems to protect human colonies. "They expect us to send 1 ship," he said slowly. "1 diplomatic vessel with a small crew." "Yes, sir. Standard council protocol for what they call minor species. They probably expect something like a light cruiser with maybe 50 people aboard." Lee stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see some of his fleet. The TDF Incheon was the flagship, a massive dreadnought with enough firepower to level a city. Around it floated destroyers, cruisers, and support ships. Good. Ships with good crews, but not enough to fight 400 enemy vessels. "They want to make an example of us," he said. "Show the galaxy what happens when humans get too bold." Park nodded. "Intelligence suggests the Council has been planning this for months. Our expansion into the outer systems has made them nervous. They see us as a threat that needs to be dealt with quickly." Lee turned back to face her. "What do our allies say?" "The few we have are staying quiet. The Alteran Republic sent a message saying they cannot help. The Freeport colonies are too far away. Everyone is afraid of the Council." This was the reality of galactic politics. Humanity was still new to space travel compared to the older alien races. They had been exploring beyond their solar system for only 50 years. In that time, they had built colonies, established trade routes, and even made a few friends. But they were still seen as newcomers, and newcomers did not have much protection. When the real powers decided to act, Lee picked up the data pad and scrolled through the intelligence reports. The Council species were old and powerful. The Vorthak Empire was known for its brutal military tactics. They preferred to crush enemies, completely rather than negotiate. The Nixari Collective had technology that was centuries ahead of most races. Their energy shields and weapons could cut through human armor like paper. The Kalani Trade Federation controlled most of the shipping routes between systems. If they were involved, it meant the Council was serious about cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy. "There is something else, sir," Park said quietly. "We intercepted some Council communications. They are planning to broadcast whatever happens at Cathara across the galaxy. They want everyone to see humanity being defeated." Lee felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "They think we will send one ship because that is what the message says. They think we are either too stupid to see the trap or too weak to do anything about it. What are your orders, Admiral?" Lee was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, he could see the bridge crew of a nearby destroyer working at their stations. Young men and women who had joined the fleet to protect human colonies and explore new worlds. They did not deserve to die in a Council trap, but they also did not deserve to live as slaves to alien powers. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 15 years old and wanted to be a starship captain like her father. What kind of galaxy would she inherit if humanity backed down now? What would happen to all the human colonies if the Council decided they were too dangerous to exist? "Get me Lieutenant Commander Kim Woo-jin," he said finally. "I want a complete, tactical analysis of our options." Park nodded and activated her communicator. "Kim Woo-jin to the Admiral's ready room, immediately." While they waited, Lee walked back to his desk and picked up the picture of his family. His wife had died in a transport accident 3 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. But military life meant he was away more than he was home. The girl was being raised by her grandmother now, getting ready to apply to the Naval Academy. Lieutenant Commander Kim Woo-jin arrived 5 minutes later. He was 28 years old and had the fastest analytical mind in the fleet. Give him any tactical problem, and he could find solutions that others missed. He was also completely honest, which meant he would tell Lee exactly how bad their situation was. "Sir, Captain Park has briefed me on the intelligence," Kim said immediately. "I have run preliminary calculations. If we send one ship to Cathara as requested, the chances of survival are less than 5%. If we send our entire fleet, we might have a 20% chance of fighting our way out, but we would lose at least half our ships." "What about doing nothing?" Lee asked. "If we ignore the summons, the Council will declare us in violation of galactic law. They will have justification to attack our colonies directly. Based on their fleet movements, they are already prepared for that option." Lee nodded. This was what he had expected, but hearing it confirmed made the decision harder. Either way, people were going to die. The only question was how many and whether humanity would survive as a free species. "There is one more option," Kim said carefully, "but it would require us to interpret their message in a very specific way. Explain. They asked for one ship, sir. They never specified which ship." Lee looked at both officers. Park was starting to smile, and Kim looked like he was working through complex calculations in his head. "You are thinking we send the biggest ship we have," Lee said. "I am thinking we send the ship they asked for," Kim replied. "But we never agreed to send it alone." 3 days after the meeting in Admiral Lee's ready room, the largest military mobilization in human history began. Across 12 different star systems, Terran Defense Fleet ships received coded orders that made their captains double-check their communications equipment. The message was simple, but impossible to believe. All ships were to converge on the Cathara system within 1 week. Commander Yoon Ha-young read the orders for the 4th time while standing on the bridge of the TDF Busan. the massive carrier, was home to 800 fighters and bombers, plus 3,000 crew members. She had commanded the ship for 2 years, ever since the previous captain died in a pirate raid near the Centauri colonies. At 36 years old, she was young for a carrier commander, but her tactical skills had impressed Admiral Lee during the Battle of New Shanghai. "Ma'am, the fighter squadrons are requesting clarification on the mission parameters," said her executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Park Jin-soo. He was a steady man who had served on carriers for 15 years and nothing usually surprised him, but today he looked confused and worried. "Tell them we will brief squadron leaders once we are underway," Yoon replied. "Right now, focus on getting all birds ready for extended combat operations." The truth was that she did not have much more information than her pilots did. The orders from Admiral Lee were marked with the highest security classification. All she knew was that the entire fleet was being assembled for what the Admiral called aggressive diplomatic action. That phrase could mean anything from a show of force to full-scale war. Through the massive windows of the carrier's bridge, she could see her fighters launching for training exercises. The small ships moved like a swarm of angry insects, practicing attack formations that they might need very soon. Each pilot was young and eager, most of them fresh from the academy. They had joined the fleet to explore space and protect colonies, not to fight in a war against the Galactic Council. In the fighter bay, Flight Leader Bae Soo-jin was running her own preparations. At 24 years old, she was one of the youngest squadron leaders in the fleet, but also one of the best pilots. Her fighter was painted with 12 small stars, each representing an enemy ship she had destroyed in various skirmishes over the past 3 years. Most of those had been pirates or raiders, not real military vessels. "Soo-jin, what do you think this is all about?" asked her wingman, Lieutenant Oh Tai-woon. He was 2 years younger and had only been in space for 6 months. This would be his first real combat mission if things went bad. "Admiral Lee does not mobilize the entire fleet for training exercises," she replied while checking her weapon systems. "Whatever is waiting for us at Kythera, it is big enough to need every ship we have." Meanwhile, on the other side of the fleet formation, Captain Choi Min-ho was dealing with his own preparations aboard the dreadnought TDF Ulsan. The massive ship was the most powerful vessel in the human fleet, with enough armor to survive direct hits from most alien weapons and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Choi had commanded the ship for 5 years, ever since it was commissioned, and he knew every bolt and wire in its hull. His crew of 3,000 was the best trained in the fleet. They had to be, because the Ulsan carried weapons that could decide the outcome of entire battles. In the ship's laboratory section, Dr. Song Yu-na was working on what might be their most important preparation of all. Dr. Song was 31 years old and had spent the last decade studying alien military technology. She was not a soldier, but her research had saved more human lives than most weapons ever would. Her laboratory was filled with captured alien equipment, technical manuals, and detailed analysis of every known council species. "Doctor, Captain Choi wants to see your tactical assessment," said her assistant, Ensign Lee Ki-jong. The young man looked nervous, probably because he understood better than most people how dangerous their mission was likely to be. "Tell the Captain I will have a complete report within the hour," Song replied without looking up from her work. She was studying weaknesses in Vorthak ship design, looking for ways that human weapons might penetrate their heavy armor. The Vorthak built their ships like fortresses, but every fortress had weak points if you knew where to look. Her research had already revealed some interesting facts. Vorthak energy shields were powerful, but had trouble with rapid frequency changes. Nexari ships were fast and well-armed, but had weak armor to save weight. The Kalani preferred automated systems that could be disrupted with the right electronic warfare techniques. On the engineering deck of the battlecruiser, TDF Daegu, engineer, Specialist Han Ji-woo was making final adjustments to humanity's newest weapons. The plasma accelerator cannons had been installed on only a few ships as a test, but initial simulations showed they could punch through almost any known shield system. Han was 29 years old and had designed most of the improvements to human weapons over the past 5 years. He was not interested in military glory or adventure. He just wanted to build things that worked better than anything the enemy had. The plasma cannons were his masterpiece, using magnetic fields to accelerate, superheated gas to incredible speeds. "How long until the new cannons are fully operational?" asked Captain Nam Seok Jin, the Daegu's commanding officer. He was a practical man who trusted his engineer's judgment more than most technical manuals. "Another 6 hours for the final calibrations," Han replied. "But sir, these weapons have never been tested in real combat. The simulations look good, but we will not know for sure until we fire them at actual targets." "Let us hope we do not need to find out," the captain said, but his tone suggested he expected otherwise. While the human fleet prepared for whatever was waiting at Kithara, the Council forces were making their own preparations. War Admiral Krextar of the Vorthak Empire stood in the command center of his flagship, the Devastator. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms, each one capable of crushing a human skull. His species had been conquering other races for thousands of years, and he saw no reason why humans should be any different. "How much longer until the human ship arrives?" he asked his tactical officer. 4 days, War Admiral. Our intelligence suggests they will send a light cruiser with minimal armament." Krextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "1 ship against 400. They must think we are fools, or they are even weaker than we believed." In the Nexari command ship, Fleet Coordinator Zetham was conducting his own analysis. The Nexari were not as physically imposing as the Vorthak, but their technology was centuries ahead of most species. Zetham was studying human tactical data, trying to understand how such a young race had managed to expand so quickly. "Their ships are primitive but functional," he told his staff. "They use kinetic weapons primarily, with some energy systems, nothing that should threaten our shields." "What about their crew capabilities?" asked his science officer. "Unknown. They have won some minor engagements against pirates and raiders, but they have never faced a real military force. This will be educational for them." Back in human space, Admiral Lee was reviewing final preparations aboard the TDF Incheon. Every battle group commander had reported ready status. The fleet would jump to Kithara in coordinated waves, using a new technique called ghost jumping that Captain Park So-min had developed. The technology would hide their approach until the last possible moment. "Admiral, we are receiving final crew transfers," reported Communications Officer Lieutenant Yoon. "All ships report full readiness." Lee nodded. In a few hours, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled would jump into what was almost certainly a trap. But if his plan worked, the Council would learn that humans were not the helpless newcomers they appeared to be. "Send a message to all ship commanders," he said. "Tell them we jump in 6 hours. Remind them that we are not going to Kithara to surrender or negotiate from weakness. We are going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten human colonies." On ships throughout, the fleet crews made final preparations. Weapons were loaded, shields were tested, and emergency procedures were reviewed. Most of the crew members were young, many of them on their first deep space mission. They were excited and nervous, but they trusted their officers and believed in their mission. In the fighter bays, pilots like Bae Soo-jin ran through combat simulations one more time. In the engineering sections, specialists like Han Ji-woo checked their untested weapons. In the laboratories, scientists like Dr. Song Yu-na reviewed their analysis of enemy weaknesses. None of them knew exactly what they would find at Kithara, but they were as ready as any human force had ever been. The Council expected 1 ship, with a small crew. Instead, they were about to face the full might of humanity's war fleet. The galaxy was about to learn that humans could be very different from what they appeared to be. The day of the diplomatic meeting arrived with the cold silence of space around Kithara. The small moon hung like a gray pearl against the black void, surrounded by the largest council fleet anyone had seen in decades. 400 warships from 3 different alien races formed a perfect sphere around the moon. Their weapons pointed inward toward the single jump point where the human ship was expected to arrive. War Admiral Krextar stood in the command center of his flagship, watching. The sensor displays with satisfaction. His Vorthak battle groups controlled the primary intercept positions, their massive dreadnoughts ready to crush any resistance. The gray-skinned alien had fought in dozens of campaigns against lesser species, and this would be no different. 1. Human ship would arrive, realize it was trapped, and either surrender or be destroyed as an example to the galaxy. "Time until the humans arrive?" he asked his tactical officer. 15 minutes, War Admiral. All ships report ready status." Krextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Signal the fleet. When the human ship appears, we will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, destroy them quickly. I want the wreckage broadcast across all Council worlds." On the Nexari command ship, Fleet Coordinator Zetham was running final calculations on his advanced computers. The pale, thin alien was known for his analytical mind and precise planning. Every aspect of the trap had been calculated perfectly. The humans would have no chance to escape once they appeared. "All energy weapon arrays charged and ready," reported his weapons officer. "Our new disruptor cannon should penetrate any shields the humans might have." "Excellent. Remember, we want enough of their ship intact for study. Human technology is primitive, but they have shown some interesting innovations." At exactly 1400 hours, sensors across the Council fleet detected the familiar energy signature of a jump point opening. Space twisted and folded as a single human. Ship dropped out of hyperspace and into normal space. It was a light cruiser, exactly what the Council had expected. The ship was smaller than most of the alien vessels surrounding it, with simple armor plating and basic weapon systems visible on its hull. The human ship was the TDF Daejeon, commanded by Captain Lee Jin-woo. He was Admiral Lee's younger brother, 38 years old and known throughout the fleet for his calm demeanor under pressure. He had volunteered for this mission knowing it would likely mean his death, but also knowing it was necessary for the plan to work. "Sir, we are being scanned by multiple hostile vessels," reported his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Park Min-jung." Her voice was steady despite the fact that they were outnumbered 400 to 1. "Let them scan," Captain Lee replied calmly. "Open communications on the standard diplomatic frequency." The main screen in the Daejeon's bridge lit up with the ugly face of War Admiral Krextar. The Vorthak's forearms gestured aggressively as he spoke, his translator making his words sound even more threatening than usual. "Human vessel, you are surrounded by the combined might of the Galactic Council. Your species has violated territorial agreements and expanded beyond acceptable limits. You will surrender your ship immediately and submit to Council justice." Captain Lee Jin-woo looked directly into the camera, his expression calm and professional. Behind him on the bridge, his crew worked at their stations as if they were conducting routine operations instead of facing certain death. "War Admiral Krextar, I am Captain Lee Jin-woo of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your diplomatic summons and have come to negotiate as requested." Krextar's laugh echoed across the communication channel. "Negotiate? You bring one small ship against our entire fleet. This is either supreme arrogance or complete stupidity." "Actually, War Admiral, we brought exactly what you asked for," Captain Lee replied. "Your message requested that humanity send one ship to this location. We have complied with your request precisely." "One ship against 400, sneered Fleet Coordinator Zetham, who had joined the communication channel. "Even for humans, this level of foolishness is remarkable." Captain Lee smiled slightly, and something in his expression made both alien commanders pause. There was no fear in his face, no desperation. Instead, he looked like a man who knew something they did not. "Respectfully, you requested one ship," he said calmly. "You never asked us to come alone." At that exact moment, space around Kithara erupted with new jump points. Not one or two, but dozens of them, opening in perfect coordination around the Council fleet. The first wave brought 30 human destroyers and cruisers, appearing in a formation that surrounded the alien ships. Before the Council forces could react, a second wave arrived, then a third. In less than 60 seconds, the entire Terran defense fleet had dropped out of hyperspace in perfect battle formation. 12 battle groups, over 300 warships, surrounded the Council fleet that had been preparing to crush a single human vessel. Massive carriers launched clouds of fighters and bombers. Dreadnoughts powered up weapon systems that could level cities. Destroyers moved into attack positions with the speed and coordination of a pack of wolves. The silence on the communication channels was complete for almost 10 seconds. Then War Admiral Krextar found his voice, but it no longer carried the confident tone of a few minutes earlier. "This is impossible. Our intelligence said humans had only a few dozen ships scattered across multiple systems." "Your intelligence was correct." Admiral Lee Dae-ho's voice came over the channel as the massive TDF Incheon moved into position near the Daejeon. "We did have our ships scattered across human space. Now we have brought them all here. On the Yao bridge of the carrier TDF Busan, Commander Yoon Ha-young was launching her fighter squadrons with practiced efficiency. 800 small craft poured out of the carrier's launch bays like angry insects, forming attack formations around the larger ships. "All squadrons report ready for combat operations," announced Lieutenant Commander Park Jin-soo. "Fighter coverage is complete." Flight Leader Bae Soo-jin led her squadron in a precise formation around a group of Vorthak heavy cruisers. Her targeting computer was already painting potential attack vectors on enemy ships that suddenly seemed much less threatening. Around her, hundreds of other fighters took similar positions, creating a web of potential destruction around every Council vessel. "Gold Squadron, this is Control," came the voice from the Busan. "Maintain ready status, but do not engage unless fired upon. Repeat, do not engage unless fired upon." "Understood, Control," Soo-jin replied. "Gold Squadron holding position." On the dreadnought TDF Ulsan, Captain Choi Min-ho was coordinating with his weapons teams to target the most dangerous Council ships. The massive vessel's guns could destroy almost any enemy ship with a single volley, but the captain was waiting for orders from Admiral Lee. "Sir, we have target locks on 12 enemy capital ships," reported his weapons officer. "All guns ready to fire on your command." "Hold fire unless they shoot first," Choi ordered, "but be ready to respond immediately if they do." In the ship's laboratory, Dr. Song Yuna was transmitting tactical data to all human vessels. Her research on Council ship weaknesses was being distributed in real time, giving every human captain the information they needed to fight effectively. Vorthak ships have weak points at the junction between their primary hull and weapon pods, she announced over the fleet tactical channel. Nexari vessels have vulnerable engine sections with minimal armor. Kalani ships rely heavily on automated systems that can be disrupted with electronic warfare. The Council fleet was in chaos. Ships that had been in perfect formation for the ambush were now scrambling to reorganize while surrounded by an enemy force they had never expected to face. Captains who had been confident of easy victory were suddenly calculating escape routes. "All Council vessels, this is Admiral Lee Dae-ho," came the calm voice over all communication channels. "You came here expecting to trap and destroy a single human ship. Instead, you find yourselves facing the full military might of humanity. I suggest you reconsider your aggressive intentions." War Admiral Krextar was staring at his tactical displays in disbelief. Every Vorthak ship was surrounded by human vessels, with superior positioning. His heavy armor and powerful weapons meant nothing when enemy ships could attack from any direction. "This changes nothing," he growled, but his voice lacked conviction. "We still outnumber you." "Do you?" Admiral Lee asked. Count again, War Admiral. And this time, count the fighters. The truth was becoming clear to every council commander. The human fleet had not just matched their numbers, they had exceeded them. With fighters and bombers included, humanity had brought over 2,000 combat vessels to Cathara. More importantly, they had achieved complete tactical surprise and held superior positions around the entire council force. Fleet Coordinator Zetham was running calculations on his advanced computers, and the results were terrifying. War Admiral, their positioning is perfect. They have overlapping fields of fire covering our entire fleet. If combat begins, our casualties will be severe. Then we will make their casualties even worse, Krextar snarled. But he was beginning to understand that this was not the easy victory he had planned. On the TDF Daejeon, Captain Li Jinwu was still smiling calmly at the alien commanders on his screen. Gentlemen, you requested negotiations. The tense standoff around Cathara lasted for exactly 17 minutes. During those 17 minutes, Council fleet commanders tried desperately to reorganize their forces and find a way out of the trap they had walked into. Human ships maintained their positions with disciplined precision, weapons ready, but not firing. The galaxy held its breath. Then a nervous weapons officer aboard the Vorthak destroyer Blood Fang made a fatal mistake. Whether it was panic, poor training, or simple aggression, he fired a plasma torpedo at the TDF Daejeon without authorization from his captain. The bright orange projectile streaked across space and struck the human cruiser's forward shields, causing moderate damage but no casualties. Captain Li Jinwu felt his ship shake from the impact. Emergency lights flickered on the bridge as his crew worked to restore full shield power, but his voice remained calm as he opened communications to the fleet. All Terran vessels, this is Daejeon. We have taken fire from a council ship. I am declaring this a hostile action against a diplomatic mission. Admiral Li Daeho's response came immediately over the fleet command channel, his voice carrying the cold authority of a man who had fought in a dozen battles. All fleet units weapons free. Show them why you never shoot at diplomats. What happened next was not just a battle. It was a demonstration of everything that made human military doctrine different from the rigid, predictable tactics of the council races. While alien species fought with massive formations and overwhelming firepower, humans had learned to fight with speed, flexibility, and the kind of creative thinking that came from being the underdog for most of their history. Commander Jang Hyun-soo commanded Destroyer Group 7, 12 fast ships that had been positioned near the outer edge of the council formation. The moment Admiral Li gave the order, Jang's ships moved like a pack of wolves sensing wounded prey. All ships, execute. Pattern Delta, he ordered. Target their heavy cruisers and avoid their main battle line. The 12 destroyers accelerated to maximum speed, using their superior maneuverability to slice through the council formation like knives through cloth. They ignored the massive Vorthak dreadnoughts that were too heavily armored to damage quickly. Instead, they targeted the medium-sized ships that provided fire support and electronic warfare capabilities. Lieutenant Park Dong-hyun was piloting his fighter in the first attack wave launched from the TDF Incheon. At 23 years old, he had been flying combat missions for only 2 years, but he had natural instincts that no amount of training could teach. His squadron's target was the Vorthak Command Dreadnought, a massive ship that seemed impossible for small fighters to threaten. Remember, we are not trying to destroy it, he told his wingman over the radio. We just need to blind it. The fighters dove toward the huge enemy ship like a swarm of angry insects. Vorthak point defense guns opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams, but the human pilots flew with an unpredictability that confused the alien targeting computers. They rolled, dove, and changed direction in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated to avoid defensive fire. Park Dong-hyun's bomber reached the dreadnought's sensor array and released his payload. The specialized warheads, were designed not to penetrate heavy armor, but to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable electronic systems. 6 other bombers did the same thing at different points on the ship's hull. Within seconds, the massive Vorthak flagship found itself blind and deaf, its sensors knocked offline by the coordinated attack. The ship was still dangerous, but it could no longer coordinate the Council fleet's defensive efforts. On the experimental stealth frigate TDF Gwangju, Captain Shin Yunji was using humanity's newest technology to create chaos in the enemy formation. The advanced cloaking system made her ship nearly invisible to Council sensors, allowing it to appear inside their defensive lines without warning. "Target acquired," announced her weapons officer. "Nexari command cruiser, range 2,000 kilometers. Fire all tubes," Captain Shin ordered. 6 torpedoes launched from the invisible ship and struck the Nexari vessel before its crew even knew they were under attack. The alien ship's advanced shields were designed to stop frontal assaults, not surprise attacks from weapons that appeared out of nowhere. The Nexari captain barely had time to send a distress signal before his ship's main reactor overloaded and exploded. The destruction of their command ship threw the technologically advanced Nexari fleet into confusion as subordinate commanders tried to figure out who was now in charge. Aboard the dreadnought TDF Ulsan, Gunnery Sergeant Kang Do-yeon was finally getting the chance to test humanity's newest weapons in actual combat. The plasma accelerator cannons had looked impressive in simulations, but no one knew how they would perform against real enemy shields. "Target the Vorthak heavy cruiser at bearing 27 Mark IV, ordered Captain Choi Min-ho. "Full power to the plasma cannons." "Aye, sir, plasma cannons charging," Kang replied. She had designed many of the improvements to the weapon systems herself, and this was the moment of truth. "Cannons at full power. Target locked." Fire. The plasma accelerators released streams of superheated gas accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. The yellow-white beams struck the Vorthak cruiser's energy shields and punched through them like they were made of paper. The alien ship's armor, designed to resist conventional energy weapons, proved useless against the new human technology. The Vorthak cruiser died in a brilliant explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. More importantly, every Council ship that witnessed the attack realized that their defensive systems were not adequate against human weapons. Dr. Song Yu-na was monitoring the battle from her laboratory aboard the Ulsan, feeding tactical information to human ships throughout the fleet. Her years of studying alien military technology were paying off as human captains exploited every weakness she had identified. "All ships, this is Dr. Song," she announced over the tactical channel. "Vorthak ships have vulnerable points where their weapon pods connect to the main hull. Target those connections to disable their primary armament. Nexari vessels have weak armor around their engine sections. Kalani ships rely on automated systems that can be jammed with broad-spectrum electronic interference." Throughout the fleet, human ships began using this information with devastating effect. The rigid, predictable tactics that had made Council races successful for centuries were being torn apart by opponents who fought with creativity and adaptability. War Admiral Krextar watched his fleet being systematically dismantled from his partially blinded flagship. The Vorthak had built their military doctrine around overwhelming force and heavy armor, but the humans were not fighting the kind of battle he expected. Instead of engaging his powerful dreadnoughts directly, they were attacking his support ships and disrupting his formations. "All ships, form defensive clusters around the heavy units," he ordered desperately. "Concentrate fire on their capital ships." But the human ships refused to cooperate with his defensive strategy. When Vorthak vessels moved to protect their larger ships, human destroyers attacked from different angles. When the aliens tried to concentrate their firepower, human fighters swarmed their weapon systems. Every time the Council forces tried to establish a defensive position, the humans found a way to disrupt it. Fleet Coordinator Zetham was having similar problems with his Nexari fleet. His ships were faster and more advanced than most human vessels, but they were designed for long-range combat using superior technology. The humans had closed to short range where superior technology mattered less than quick thinking and aggressive. Tactics. Their ships are primitive, but their tactics are sophisticated, he reported to his staff. They are not fighting like any species we have encountered before. Should we attempt to withdraw to long range? Asked his tactical officer. We cannot. They have us surrounded. Any ship that tries to break formation will be destroyed individually. This was the genius of Admiral Lee's plan. By surrounding the Council fleet completely, he had eliminated their ability to use their preferred long-range fighting style. The aliens were forced to fight at close range, where human advantages in training and flexibility could overcome technological disadvantages. On the carrier, TDF Busan, Commander Yoon Ha-young was coordinating the largest fighter assault in human history. Over 2,000 small craft from 12 different carriers were attacking Council ships in carefully planned waves. Strike Group Alpha, target the Kalani battle line, she ordered. Strike Group Beta, continue your attack on the Vorthak. Support ships. All squadrons maintain tight formations and watch for friendly fire. Flight leader Bae Soo-jin led her squadron in a coordinated attack on a Kalani heavy cruiser. The alien ship was firing automated defense systems that should have been impossible for fighters to penetrate, but the human pilots were not flying in predictable patterns. Gold Squadron, execute random evasion pattern 7, she ordered. Make it impossible for their computers to predict our movements. The fighters dove, rolled, and twisted through space in a complex dance that confused the alien targeting computers. Half the squadron drew defensive fire while the other half attacked the ship's weapon systems. Within minutes, the heavy cruiser was defenseless and drifting. The silence that followed Admiral Lee's words was broken only by the crackling of damaged ship systems and the quiet hum of life support across hundreds of vessels. The space around Kithara looked like a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered expectations. Council ships drifted powerless or fled in disorder, while the human fleet maintained perfect formation despite 6 hours of intense combat. War Admiral Krextar stared at the tactical display from his crippled flagship, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. His massive dreadnought had lost main power, weapons, and most of its sensor array. Around him, the proud Vorthak fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds lay in ruins. Ships that had seemed invincible that morning were now drifting hulks or debris fields. War Admiral, the humans are hailing us, reported his communications officer, one of the few systems still working on the bridge. Put them through, Krextar said, his voice hollow with defeat. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the screen, and the Vorthak commander was surprised by what he saw. There was no gloating in the human's expression, no cruel satisfaction at his enemies' defeat. Instead, Lee looked like a professional soldier who had completed an unpleasant but necessary task. War Admiral Krextar, I am transmitting coordinates for emergency rendezvous points. Human medical ships will provide aid to your wounded, and our rescue vessels will assist with evacuation procedures for ships that cannot maintain life support. Krextar's 4 arms trembled with a mixture of rage and confusion. You offer to help us after what we tried to do. You tried to trap and destroy a diplomatic mission, Lee replied calmly. We responded appropriately, but the fighting is over now, and wounded beings need medical attention regardless of which side they fought. This was not how galactic warfare usually worked. When the Council defeated enemy fleets, survivors were either enslaved or left to die in space. The idea that victors would help their defeated enemies was so alien to Council, thinking that Krextar wondered if it was some kind of trick. Medical Commander Oh Soo-jin was already leading the humanitarian effort from her hospital ship, TDF Jeju. The 34-year-old doctor had served in combat zones throughout human space, treating injuries from pirate raids and industrial accidents. But this was the first time she had been asked to treat alien physiology under battlefield conditions. Doctor, we are receiving distress signals from 17 Council ships, reported her medical coordinator. multiple species with different biological requirements. Deploy all medical shuttles, O ordered. I want trauma teams on every ship that needs assistance, and get me everything we have on Vorthak, Nexari, and Kalani medical requirements. The sight of human medical shuttles approaching damaged council ships was broadcast across the galaxy by news crews who had been expecting to film humanity's destruction. Instead, they captured images that would reshape interspecies relations for decades to come. Human doctors and medics working alongside alien crew members to save lives, regardless of the fact that those same aliens had been trying to kill them hours earlier. Captain Nam Gite commanded the rescue vessel TDF Busan, which was pulling survivors from the destroyed Vorthak heavy cruiser extinction. Among the survivors was War Admiral Krexatar himself, whose flagship had finally lost life support completely. "War Admiral, you are safe now," Captain Nam said as medical teams carried the injured alien to the ship's medical bay. "Our doctors will treat your injuries." "Why?" Krextar asked, his translator struggling with the concept he was trying to express. "Why do you save enemies?" Captain Nam thought for a moment before answering. "Because that is what makes us human. We can be your worst enemy in battle and your best ally in peace. The choice has always been yours." On the Nexari command ship, Fleet Coordinator Zetham was conducting his own analysis of what had just occurred. His analytical mind was trying to process the tactical impossibility of what the humans had accomplished. By every calculation, the Council fleet should have won easily. Instead, they had been defeated so completely that most species would have required decades to recover. "Request permission to speak with Admiral Lee," he told his communications officer. "Admiral, the Nexari fleet coordinator is asking for a private communication," Lieutenant Yoon reported from the TDF Inchin's bridge. "Put him through," Lee replied. Zetham's pale, thin face appeared on the screen. The Nexari were known for their logical approach to everything, and the fleet coordinator looked like he was struggling to understand something that did not fit his calculations. "Admiral Lee, I must ask how this was possible. Our intelligence indicated that human military capabilities were primitive compared to Council standards." "Your intelligence was correct about our technology," Lee replied. "But you made the mistake of thinking that technology alone determines the outcome of battles. Please explain." "You assumed we would fight the way you fight. Large formations, predictable tactics, reliance on superior equipment. But humans learn to fight as underdogs. We learn to be creative, to adapt, to find solutions that others do not consider." Zetham nodded slowly. "We underestimated not your weapons, but your thinking." "More than that," Lee said. "You underestimated our unity. When you threaten one human colony, you threaten all of them. When you attack one human ship, you attack the entire species. That is something most Council races have forgotten." The conversation was interrupted by reports from across the battlefield. Human ships were not only providing medical aid to defeated enemies, they were also sharing supplies, offering engineering assistance, and even providing escorts for Council ships that wanted to leave the system safely. This unprecedented display of post-battle conduct was being watched by species throughout the galaxy. Many had expected humans to either enslave their defeated enemies or leave them to die. Instead, they were demonstrating a completely different approach to warfare and diplomacy. Ambassador Yu Min-kyung arrived in the system aboard the diplomatic vessel TDF Sejong 3 hours after the battle ended. The 50-year-old diplomat had spent 20 years representing humanity in galactic affairs, usually from a position of weakness. Now she was arriving to negotiate from a position of overwhelming strength. "Admiral Lee, I assume you have some new terms to discuss with the Council," she said with a slight smile. "I do indeed," Lee replied. "But first, let them see what kind of neighbors they are dealing with." The next 6 hours provided the galaxy with a masterclass in human values. While Council military doctrine called for the complete destruction of defeated enemies, Humans treated their prisoners with respect and dignity. Wounded aliens received the same medical care as wounded humans. Damaged ships were offered repair assistance instead of being left to drift in space. Captain Kim Soo-ho commanded the communications vessel TDF Pohang, which was broadcasting humanity's message to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The transmission was simple but revolutionary. This is the Terran Defense Fleet speaking to all species in Council space and beyond. Today's events at Cathara demonstrate that humanity is not the minor species some believed us to be, but they also demonstrate what kind of species we are. The broadcast continued with footage of human medical teams treating alien wounded, human engineers helping repair Council ships, and human officers treating defeated enemies with dignity and respect. We did not come to Cathara to conquer or destroy. We came because we were threatened, and we responded appropriately. But we take no pleasure in victory over those who sought to harm us. Instead, we offer partnership to those who want it, protection to those who need it, and devastating consequences to those who threaten innocent beings. The message concluded with Admiral Lee's personal statement to the galaxy. The Terran Defense Fleet will protect any species threatened by aggression. Human space is sovereign and non-negotiable. The Galactic Council can choose cooperation or irrelevance. War Admiral Krextar, recovering in the medical bay of the TDF Busan, watched the broadcast with growing amazement. His species had built an empire through conquest and intimidation, but these humans were offering something different. They were strong enough to destroy their enemies, but compassionate enough to heal them instead. Captain Nam, he called to the human officer who had saved his life. What will happen to us now? That depends on you, Nam replied. Admiral Lee will offer you safe passage home if you agree to leave human space alone. If you choose to continue being our enemy, well, you have seen what happens to enemies. Fleet Coordinator Zetham was having similar thoughts aboard his damaged command ship. The Nexari had always believed that superior technology guaranteed victory, but the humans had proven that wrong. More importantly, they had demonstrated that military power combined with moral integrity created something entirely new in galactic politics. Young cadet Lee Da-yoon, Admiral Lee's 15-year-old daughter, watched news broadcasts of the battle from her dormitory at the Naval Academy on Earth. She had always been proud of her father, but now she was seeing him reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. Her roommate, another cadet named Park So-young, sat beside her watching the reports. "Your father just changed everything, did he not?" "I think he did," Dae-yoon replied softly. "The galaxy thought humans were weak because we had not conquered anyone.